that have been at this before, you've heard me talk about single stair. Some people have started calling me Mr. Single Stair. I'm trying to branch out to other topics. I find elevators quite sexy now. Mezzanines is a nice French word that I'll probably bore you to death with in the next few minutes. And this is a report that I've been working on with Jack Keys, who's a fire protection engineer, and some of you may have been working with him on wood frame projects, etc., to really talk about the gap in the code between houses and high-rises. It's the first time I'm presenting this. We finished the document 4 days ago and just sent it to print, and so there's copies of it out front for sale. We paid $25 to print each one, and they were selling them for $20, so you're getting them at a bargain. And I can tell you that the knowledge in this is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's just a fact. That's no narcissism. So. As some of you may know from the work on Impossible Toronto and other work that the Neptus Foundation has supported, this particular design, a 6-story building, partly for what is inside its floor plan, is impossible to build in Ontario. And we have started to ask the question, why? We also know that over the next 30 years, we're going to be building a lot of multiplexes and housing on major streets. As you've seen from some of the architects before, it's possible to build these. Are they accessible? Do they have sprinklers in them? If you're asleep in your bedroom and a fire starts in your kitchen, will you die? Is this the type of housing that, as we have an aging demographic population, is being built in the best possible way? The answer to those questions is often no. And partly the culprit of it is the building code that has been written to make it easy to build houses, to make it reasonably easy to build high-rises where you just have the economies of scale to not really give a shit about additional building code requirements. But if you're trying to do stuff in between, you are kind of screwed. So what does that mean? As many of you know, there's this Part 9, Part 3 binary in the code. If you're doing a Part 9 building, you don't need an elevator, you don't need sprinklers, and if you only have 4 units sharing the means of egress, you don't need a fire alarm system. Sounds safe and accessible, doesn't it? As soon as you go to 4 stories, you need an elevator, 2 stairs, sprinklers, fire alarm system, standpipe, licensed architect, licensed engineer. Who wants to go to 4 stories? But again, from a public policy perspective, to build safer, more accessible housing, we should actually be doing everything in our power to build 4-story buildings. Zoning and land use policies have now started to shift to say, we want 4-story buildings. And so the next layer on the onion that we need to peel is the building code disincentivizing it. And this is confirmed even in some of the own reporting from the City of Toronto. City of Toronto, as part of the Housing Accelerator Fund, was looking at allowing 6-plexes. They went forwards with it. But in the same reporting, looked at allowing 4-story buildings. And the excuse they gave to not go forwards with 4-story permissions is the building code, which is kind of backwards, that you wouldn't do a zoning reform because of the building code. So Jack Keys and I worked on a report that looks at recommendations for buildings up to 18 meters. That's about 6 stories. We looked at ways in which trade-offs like modern fire alarm systems and sprinkler systems will increase the safety and affordability of housing supply. We looked at research that was actually done by the province, Toronto Buildings and Toronto Fire and Toronto Planning in the 1990s, but was only partially implemented. And so really we've known about these problems for more than 30 years, and it's time to bring them back to the forefront. And we're going to learn from other jurisdictions outside Canada, in the US, and also alternative solutions being the performance-based compliance pathway that have been approved in Ontario. And what does this mean? It's, again, to make housing easier to build, but without decreasing the level of safety. And so anytime a fire chief or someone says the word that compromise, I get really pissed off, because that is not what we're doing here. So there's 8 recommendations in the report. I don't have time because Chris only gave me 10 minutes, thank you very much, to get through them all. You need to go and get the report. You also need to follow me on LinkedIn, and as soon as it's up, the digital version will be there. So this is a building in Montreal. Now look at it closely. How many stories is this building under building code compliance? In Ontario, this building is 4 stories and has to have elevators, sprinklers, etc. In Montreal, this building is 3 stories. Why is that? In Montreal, being a chartered city with its ability to write codes that contravene provincial law, they allow mezzanines on the uppermost story that are not more than 40% of the area on the level below if a fire alarm system is provided. That's about 11% more floor space in your building. That's an extremely nice bedroom with a rooftop deck beside it. And if you notice the setback, it also means you're not overshadowing or causing the building to feel like a four-story building. It's kind of awesome. And for the architects in the room, again, mezzanines are allowed in the code, but they gotta look down to the space below. In Montreal, you can do the thing on the top, which is, frankly, just a far better and safer design. Next topic. This is a 6-story affordable housing project in Hamilton. You see that wall that's got the sunset cast on it? The building code tells you that wall needs to be out of concrete or steel, and we've heard some other architects talk about this topic. But they worked with a fire protection engineer to submit an alternative solution to the municipality to say, rather than it being 1-hour steel studs, we will do 2-hour wood studs. So twice as much drywall on it, and if there's a fire, that wall is going to stand up for twice as long than the steel studs that would melt in half as much time, and they get it approved. But the problem is that when you're doing a small 3-story project, you tend to not have the time and budget to go through the fire protection engineering performance-based approach, and this is why we need to codify this. Because if our goal is to lower the embodied carbon emissions and the cost of construction and allow prefabrication where the entire building is going up in wood, this is the solution. Here you're seeing a 3-story multiplex with steel studs on the sidewalls. The steel studs are kind of fucking stupid. Here is, again, your 1-hour steel stud compliant wall. Here is your 2-hour wood wall. We live in Canada. We like our trees. Canadian lumber was in the King's speech when he came to Ottawa. So we should be doing everything in our power to put wood studs everywhere we can, regardless of the growth rings. Here's the 6-story building. That is not built yet. If the municipal water supply doesn't have enough pressure, you need to put a fire pump for the sprinkler system. If you put a fire pump, you need to have a 2-hour emergency generator. If you have a generator but your building's all electric, you probably need a diesel tank or a gas line. How much does a generator cost and the diesel tank and the operating expenses and everything for it? Somewhere around $250,000 to $300,000. Not a big deal if you're a high-rise building. If you're a 4 to 6-story building, that's a real issue. Plus, you're putting in a natural gas line to a building that should be all electric. So, how can we deal with this? Go and read the report. I'm going to talk briefly about single stair. This is an alternative solution that we submitted in Toronto. Instead of having 2 exits for the 3-story building, it's sprinklered, upgraded doors, and protected balconies. This is a design in the US, again, in the entire United States, not just in urban areas. In the entirety of the United States, you can build a 3-story building with a single stair as long as it's sprinklered. There's only the exception of the city of Chicago, but they're weird. And this is just a reminder that the OBC and the NBC is at the bottom, because you cannot build more than 2 stories with single stair. Then you've got the US IBC code, the US NFPA code, British Columbia, City of Vancouver, Seattle, New York City, England and Wales, Australia, New Zealand, and up at the top, I just put countries with a lot of white people that speak English. So you can see where the rest of the world is at. This is a 4-story building in Toronto that someone in the room has developed. It's got scissor stairs, and we know that the developer wasn't happy having to do scissor stairs. Why do scissor stairs matter, though? At the top, you're seeing the sort of typical compliance of a scissor stair. You're using about 46 square meters of space for circulation. At the bottom is the recommended scissor stair design for small buildings that would be at least a compromise towards single stair to make them more efficient. But what does single stair really mean? Single stair is cutting you down to less than half as much circulation area. It's kind of common sense. The last little topic I'll go in my last minute here. So this is a 3-story plex that we'll be hearing a bit more about. It's got a very slow elevator. Partly that's because you can either put a very slow, cheap elevator in or an enormous, expensive elevator. The rest of the world outside North America has this other elevator that a wheelchair can roll in and out of. And every time I travel around the world and I'm in a 6-story apartment building, I don't see any issues with having that kind of elevator. But North America is, I guess, a regulatory island, and maybe now that Canada's looking to trade more with other jurisdictions, we can de-Americanize our codes and standards. So, what does all of this mean? If you look at everything in the report, it means that multiplexes like this building could have had 2 more bedrooms and an elevator. We also did a quick sort of voodoo math macroeconomic exercise looking at what is the impact on net operating income, what is the impact on construction cost, and we found that the total pro forma impact is somewhere between $500,000 and just over $1 million. So it means that buildings like this one, looking to the CMHC housing catalog, could be $600,000 more feasible. So how do you change the building code? Well, we have the Ontario Building Code, which is the jurisdiction of the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And we have the National Building Code that we should harmonize more and more to, which is written by the CBHCC. I sit on the task group for CBHCC on single stair, and we are going to spend up until 2030 on working on that. The work is going smoothly. I'm quite impressed at the process. But the challenge is that if we submit a code change request tomorrow for the other 7 items in this book to NBC, they won't be put on the task group priority list until the next code cycle, which means the earliest date they'll possibly be in the National Building Code is 2035, and Ontario takes a 1.5 years to harmonize afterwards. And so the question is, who is going to lead on these code changes? And should we go to the national or the provincial process? And I leave you all to ponder that question. Thank you very much.